How's it? I'm Killer Rabbit, and I'm gonna show you how I made this pixel art castle with this Wacom tablet. I start out with a quick sketch. This is like a visual brainstorming session and helps generate the ideas and layout for this piece. The main ideas I'm focusing on here are the giant moon behind the castle and this gothic archway to frame the piece. Holding down the shift key, Aseprite automatically generates straight lines with each brushstroke. I use this technique to make a tiled texture on these columns. Once that's done, I start adding detail to the frame. Breaking up the shading with some chips and dithering can add a lot of texture really quickly, giving it a more realistic weathered look. Some nice highlights on the edges of these blocks makes them feel shiny like stone. We can take some chips out of these too. Of course, no fancy gothic window is complete without a fancy gothic arch. The Wacom pen is especially useful for drawing these kind of organic shapes, which can be quite challenging to get right in pixel art. With the frame taken care of, I move on to the castle. I use a medium-sized brush to imply a brickwork texture, before going in with a smaller brush for fine detail. I add as many jagged spikes as I can fit to give the castle a threatening feel, with tall spires and steeples to add a fantasy flavor. Some flying buttresses and gothic archways help make a more dynamic silhouette, making the overall piece more interesting to the eye. Edge highlights can also help make certain objects stand out, drawing attention to the most detailed parts of the image, while also adding some contrast with the darkest parts. Using a fine pixel brush, I add flecks of light to make windows, making the castle look more lived in. The placement of these windows isn't super important, since even if they were evenly distributed, not all of them would be lit. Once I have a basic design down, I just carry on like this, adding detail wherever it seems empty. Unsurprisingly, pixel art is a lot more art than science. While you can never have too many spiky towers, add some variety by changing up the design here and there. Unlike most of the castle we made so far, these rocks are a more organic shape, which I made by using a larger pixel brush, almost like a paintbrush. A last couple of edge highlights just to define the shape, and these rocks are looking good to go. I like to go back to the parts I've already finished, and just seeing if they could use a bit more detail here and there. Getting to work on this gothic chapel, I make a large rose window and a steeple, edge-lit by the moon. Speaking of, for the texture, I like to use this checkerboard pattern, called dithering. It helps blend colors and adds a nice texture to the moon's rocky surface. As for the sky, well, I want it to be cloudy, but with some stars still visible. Using some horizontal brush strokes, I can make these long wispy clouds. Things are looking a bit blue now, so some added orange should look good, since complementary colors are like candy to the eyes. Now that we've got some color, I just fill in the rest of the sky and away we go. For the clouds, I used a dithering brush. Make one by pressing Ctrl and B on the keyboard. You can also bind this to one of the shortcut keys on the tablet, or the handy buttons on the side of the pen. I use this brush to do some touch-ups on the clouds, giving it that semi-transparent look. Doing the same thing and neatening up on the other side. Once that's done, I add some fog to this moat using the same dithering method I used for the clouds, and add some extra details to the empty patches, including filling in the rest of the rocks on the island. For the foreground, I went with your standard pile of human skulls. James Cameron, please don't sue me. I added some glowing eyes for a pop of color, and then added edge lighting to the surrounding skulls to help blend them better with the environment. I added ribs and other bone detritus for some variety and to fill in blank spaces. To justify the edge lighting on the frame, I made two torch stands. these are just concrete grave-like plinths with some fire on top. And of course, what would a haunted castle be without some spooky bats? And we're done. On to the glamour shots.